Hello and welcome everybody. So today is the fourth lecture on the Evans Gambit, and I would like, with great pleasure, to explain you what is our modern ideas in the Evans Gambit, which were introduced by one of the greatest players in the chess history and long years champion, Garry Kasparov, who started to play the Evans Gambit in the middle of 19th. I would say, let's say 20-30 years ago, were not so many players who decided to use the Evans Gambit in their practice, except maybe famous Grandmaster Sveshnikov, who loved to play Evans, and one of his famous games was against Nigel Short. But as a big surprise, in 1995, Garry Kasparov played the Evans Gambit against Vishy Anand, his future challenger in the World Championship match. So this happened in the Tal Memorial in Riga, when after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, Kasparov, instead his usual and well-known weapon bishop b5, Rai Lopez, decided to play bishop c4. I believe already here Anand realized that Kasparov is having something in his mind. After bishop c5, Kasparov played b4. So when we look, when someone, some amateur playing b4 move, so we can say, okay, he's brilliant talent, he's quite maybe good player in the terms of playing in some friendly games. But when Kasparov is sacrificing a pawn, you can be quite sure that something were cooked at home. And as I know Garry quite well, between 85 to 88 I was one of his students in the Botvinnik Kasparov school, and then during the late 19th I was his second for a few years and helped him in the famous match Kasparov against the world. So I know that Garry is taking all surprises quite seriously, and this is not just small surprise. Garry prepared that line for a while, and the result of his analysis he showed in his games. And one of these bombs at that time was Evans Gambit, when Garry was much better prepared for that fight than even brilliant player as Vishy Anand was not able to stop Kasparov's attack and lost in just 25 moves. So this quite incredible show I would like to present. Bishop takes b4, c3. So if we look at that position from the grandmaster point of view, that first of all we are trying to ask ourselves where to move our bishop in terms of how to avoid the most direct preparation. So I believe that Anand, who knows Kasparov quite well for many years already, immediately understands that bishop a5 or bishop c5 were quite good cooked at home by Garry Kasparov's team, and decided to play the most safe continuation bishop e7, which were quite standard reaction in grandmaster games. Many black's idea that after white is playing immediately d4, black is answering with a quite standard, I would say, standard counter-attack, knight a5. By other words, black is saying, okay, I'm ready to sacrifice back a pawn. Pay attention that black's pawn on e5 is not protected anymore. But I would like to destroy your chances to create the kingside attack. So, and that line was quite popular in the 18th. Also, thanks to the Grandmaster Evgeny Sveshnikov. In his famous game against Nigel Shore, he played knight takes e5. And after knight takes e4, knight takes e4, and d7, d5, black is destroying white's center and keeping two bishops. Even white's position is slightly better after e takes d5, queen takes d5, and knight e3, because in the future white would move forward his center. After c4, knight comes to c3, short castling, when black is having slight problem with the bishop on c8, not so clear where to develop it. For me, it's absolutely clear that Kasparov played the Evans gambit not for reaching such a position when white is only slightly better and almost equal game. Kasparov came with a surprise. He played bishop e2. That was quite new move in that position. Instead, going into the standard attacks with the white's bishop posed towards the f7 pawn, white is just simply moves his bishop back and asking the question, so what black is going to do about his pawn on e5? I believe that Vichy here was not considered too much and just decided to capture on d4. Later analysis showed that this is one of the best continuations. So now white has quite pleasant choice. So white could just simply capture the pawn on d4 with his pawn. Indeed, after a move like d6 and the knight comes to f6, black is completing his development, and even white's position is quite nice. White has quite strong pawn center. For strong player, it's not enough. We are always looking for more. So Kasparov preparation was based on quite unusual idea. Look at that move. Queen takes d4. We are remembering now the games of Morphy. White instead going for the better positional from nice looking pawn center into the sharp and very complex battle where we have much better development. And now look, white's queen aims the g7 pawn. Vichy was not feeling here so well. He understood very fast that, let's say, if he's playing king f8, then he's losing his castling rights. Bishop f6 is quite dangerous because white is just pushing forward his pawn, and after bishop e7, short castling, still is not so easy to finish development on his king side. Most natural continuation is knight f6. That exactly is a move which Vichy played. And white is stamping. e4, e5. No time for castling because black already intended to castle himself. So after e4, e5, black has to solve new problems. And it's not so easy. So knight cannot move anymore so fast. After knight h5, g4 just immediately wins the game. Knight g8, of course, not so great move, even to calculate on grandmaster level. So, knight c6. Black is taking a chance to bring back his knight. At the same time, white's queen has been attacked. Queen h4. Knight d5. Finally, knight escaped from the strong pressure, and once again seems like black is doing fine. But Kasparov's next move, pointer that it's too far to say that black's problems are solved. Queen g3, intending black's pawn on g7. Once again, white with very aggressive moves keeps his initiative, not giving black chance to complete his development. So now we could realize that move short castling is not working anymore, since after bishop h6 black has to pay, at least exchange, otherwise the checkmate is coming after queen takes g7. Unpleasant surprise. So g6 is necessary. In fact, white is a pawn down, but after bishop h6, quite easy to understand that white's initiative is more significant than even a pawn. Indeed, Kasparov decided not to go too far, just completing his development, short castling. Black is under strong pressure. Let's say, in case of short castling, white is simply playing rook d1, knight b6, a4, continue pressing black's position from the king side and from the queen side. How to stop a4, a5? Let's say after a5, white could dominate after bishop h6. Rook e8, continue strong, very strong attack. Let's say after e6, black is almost done. F takes e6 will be made by bishop d3, and how to stop bishop takes g6, completely destroying black's position on the king side. Look, all white pieces looking towards the black's king. Let's back. So the same at that situation, Vichy decided that the most safe place for a king probably would be the queen side, and decided to get rid of white's pawn on e5, which prevent his pieces from developing. So d6. He's not playing d6 immediately. First of all, he is moving away his knight, maybe intending to play d5 or d6 next. And after Kasparov played c4, why we play c4? Not just for controlling the center, taking control over the d5 square, but intending to develop the knight to the most aggressive outpost to c3. Once again, I would like to remind you that white is playing with a pawn down, but black is having problem with the space. White is having extremely strong pawn on e5, which prevents black's pieces from being activated. d6. Now white is gaining more time, because after rook d1, pawn on d6 is pinned. And not so easy to find the way how black is going to complete his development. I guess that Anand realized that it's not so great position he was looking for after the opening, and instead playing move like bishop d7, he went for more aggressive continuation. He was trying to solve his problems concrete way. Knight d7. From the positional point of view, black is intending white's pawn on e5. But from the general point of view, black is playing already so many moves with his knight. Let's pay attention. Knight came from f6, from g8 to f6, and to d5, to b6, and then back to d7. So black used to play with his knight too much. Of course, no need to ask Kasparov to sacrifice one more pawn. He's doing it with pleasure. Bishop h6, also preventing black from castling. Also, after bishop h6, knight takes e5 is a big question. Knight takes e5, knight takes e5, knight takes e5. Right now, Anand is looking forward that Kasparov would play bishop g7, move which many players would perform in their games, because white is not only intending the black's rook on h8, but also knight on e5, since pawn on d6 pinned. But that was the point of Anand's idea. Vichy would answer strongly here with bishop f6, sacrifice and exchange, and after bishop takes h8, bishop takes h8, white's attack is disappeared. So black is having 2 pawns for exchange. His king already quite safe. White's dark square bishop is gone. Black is having quite strong position, I mean positional compensation with 2 bishop for slight disadvantage, material slight disadvantage. So, once again, Kasparov not going for material, but considering that development in such situation is much more important factor. Knight c3, brilliant move. Now, bishop g7 is on the air. f6, black somehow protects his knight. Also intending maybe to play bishop knight f7, sending away the bishop from h6, and finally making castle. How Kasparov is answering? Simply not paying attention to the black threat. He is continuing his own attack according to the rules which we studied in our previous lecture. When you have huge development advantage, we have to open up the position in the center, files and diagonal for our pieces. c4, c5, that move played by Garry Kasparov. Not only destroying the black center, but open diagonal for his bishop. Black has very tough choice. Knight f7, c takes d6. Force black to capture with the pawn. White is not allowing black's king to escape anyway. Queen e3, taking control over the h6 square. So after knight takes h6 and queen takes h6, black's king once again cannot move. White at the same time intending to bring his bishop or to c4 or to b5. Knight is looking forward to obtain the great outpost on d5, after which black's position would be destroyed very fast. Knight takes h6, almost forced. Queen takes h6. So after queen takes h6, black has to send away white's queen from h6, since king f7 is losing immediately. It's not that easy to see it, but bishop c4 allows white to create the decisive threats. After bishop e6, bishop takes e6, king takes e6, White is not playing immediately queen g7, since after queen f8, situation is far from being clear. Since white's queen has to be traded. Instead, we just continue rook e1, putting the rook to the open file. Oops. King has to go to f7, and white is bringing his knight to the center. Knight d5. How to stop white's attack? Bishop f8 will be made by queen f4 or queen e3, rook e8. Definitely queen takes h7, finishing the game. At the same time, white is intending to bring his rook to the 7th rank. No way to avoid losing in this situation. After long consideration, Anand played quite funny move. Look at that. Bishop f8. In 1 second, all black pieces on the back rank. Like Wishy is just set up in the new game. So he played bishop f8, trying to send away white's queen from this dangerous outpost on h6. So what's Wishy's main idea? That after bishop b5 check, he smartly plays with his king to f7, and then king is coming to g7. Somehow black is taking his king away from the center. Of course, Gary is not considering bishop b5 as a real threat, but just played queen e3 check. This check is very unpleasant. Why? Since queen e7 will be made by knight e4, white is intending knight takes d6 or knight takes f6. Since black's king is on e8 and the queen will be pinned. Queen e5, knight takes f6, and just back. Keeping in mind all the threats, bishop c4 check, f4, developing the decisive attack. White is having too many pieces in the game when black is totally undeveloped. So after queen e3 check, Anand played king f7. I would like to pay attention, black is still 2 pawns up, but white's domination decides the game. Knight d5. So knight came to the center and attacking all black's position. White is intending bishop c4 next. Bishop e6. That move played by Anand. So later recommendation were here bishop d7 or even bishop g7, but in the real game it's quite difficult to keep your bishop on d7 when white is intending to bring his bishop to c4, creating so strong threats over the black's king. So that's why Vichy played simply bishop e6. But this move is losing by force. Kasparov played knight f4. After bishop d7, white is just winning back the pawn and still keeping great attack, intending knight a6. At least. What else? After knight f4, black cannot play queen d7. since after bishop b5 white is distracting black's queen from the e6 square, queen takes and queen takes e6, black is losing completely. The rook c1 intending rook c7, and checkmate is coming. So queen e7 is the last chance, last try. And here very funny thing happened. Kasparov made a move and black resigned. Could you imagine such a move? Very simple, quiet move. Not just some super combination. White plays just rook e1, and after long consideration, Anand resigned. 25 moves. Let's try to solve this puzzle. Why Anand decided to resign? First of all, bishop d7 will be made by bishop c4 check. After king e8, both pieces are over on the e file. White is playing queen d2 and black is losing his strongest piece, queen on e7. What else? After move like d5, white is simply plays bishop f3, intending d5 and e6. Rook e8 only move, and no need to be grandmaster to find knight takes e6, queen takes e6, bishop takes d5. Game is over. White is winning. At least exchange continue his maiden threats. So d5 doesn't work. Once again, queen d7 doesn't solve any problems because bishop b5. Queen takes b5. Check on e6. Rook comes to b1. And black is losing immediately. After queen f5, take on b7, check. Once again, black is playing half a game with his king, and still the most important piece cannot find any safe place on the board. After king h6, white could play even queen e3, but even queen trade is not allowing black to survive. So intending rook h3, then knight e6, black cannot move anymore with his pieces. Let's say after king g5, knight e6 check, king g6 check on g3, and we of course could play for remate after rook b4, but I like this simple move. The game is over. Black cannot move anyway. White is threatening to play rook takes f5, f6, and rook takes f5, and black's king will be mated. Let's back. So black could try to develop his bishop after bishop h6, but in that case e7 is hanging. White is coming with a simple tactics. Bishop c4. Simple but powerful. Bishop cannot capture white's bishop since e7. Queen is hanging. Queen takes e7. White is winning. And finally, black could try playing rook e8 immediately, which white will met by knight takes e6, queen takes e6, queen takes e6, And now dual. Rook takes and bishop c4. Rook is gone, the full rook. Or king takes e6 and bishop comes to b5 with a decisive check, and once again black is losing material. So that's why already after move rook e1, look at that nice move. In that position, quiet move rook e1 forced Vishy Anand to resign to Garry Kasparov in just 25 moves in our opening which we studied, the famous Evans Gambit, which became one of the most dangerous weapons in today's practice. After Kasparov, many strong grandmaster, top grandmaster include this opening into their repertoire. I saw few games played by Shirov, Morozevich. Nigel Short started to play it very successfully. Even on the last Vacanze tournament in 2008, he beat with that opening a Dutch grandmaster Lee Amin. So, as you can see, Evans Gambit is still playable, still very popular, and I wish you good luck with your new openings and continue building your opening repertoire with the Gambit openings like Evans Gambit. Thanks everybody for watching my lectures, and our Gambit series will continue next week. See you and bye.